Welcome back to the channel, and today we're talking Transformers, and we're talking the future of the live action universe. Now before we get into it, I want to make sure you are subscribed to the channel with the notification bell turned on so you stay up to date with all my Transformers content. Now once again we are revisiting the Transformers live action universe because there has been more developments. Now previously on the channel we talked about a sequel to Transformers The Last Knight. 1 minute it was on, the next minute it was off. We've talked about a Beast Wars potential. We've talked about a Bumblebee sequel, which would be a buddy movie between Optimus Prime and Bumblebee. We've also talked about Paramount canning the Optimus Prime solo film. And a lot of the stuff that we talk about is usually down to the fact that Lorenzo de Bonaventura has been talking. Well, he's been talking again, and this detail comes from Screen Rant, and I will link to their article in the description box below, so if you want to go and have a read and check it out for yourself, you can do so. But this is what the article has said, and I'll read you a short extract. So the first major line of this article reads like this: the next film in the Transformers franchise will not be a follow-up to Transformers The Last Knight, and director Michael Bay has no plans to return to the franchise. Now the article continues to go on and reference Transformers The Last Knight and its poor performance with the critics in comparison to Bumblebee the movie, which was well received. Now with that being the case, it seemed to make perfect sense for anyone associated with the franchise, albeit the studio in Paramount or Hasbro, would indeed make clear that this was the opportunity to take the franchise forward with a reboot. Whether that be with a second Bumblebee movie or something else, it doesn't really matter. The main directive is to make clear that we're going to venture forward with a reboot and the Bayverse is no more. Now that should have been the message to the Transformers fandom. But one producer keeps on putting a spanner in the works. Let me continue to read this article. Paramount and Hasbro are on record as being satisfied with Bumblebee's performance, and going back to Bay's style would seem counterintuitive to say the least. The reason this is even needed to be clarified is really down to de Bonaventura himself, who seems to give conflicting information on the franchise direction virtually every time he gives an interview. Now there are some de Bonaventura defenders out there who believe he's very passionate about the franchise, and I don't question his passion. I just wish he would get in line and understand that when the studio says something, maybe he should fall in line and stick with that narrative, because as I was recording this video, more details came out and de Bonaventura was speaking again. Now it sounded like initially from the Screen Rant article that de Bonaventura was in damage control. He'd said something when he referenced the fact that The Last Knight would have a sequel, then he had to backtrack after maybe the studio bitch slapped him. And again today he's talking about this, and he's reaffirming one of those 2 points. So which was it? Are we getting a sequel or aren't we? Well, let me read to you from this article the quote, or the quotes, from Lorenzo de Bonaventura. So the question was put to him: for the next Transformers, are you looking for new directors, or are you hoping you can still make Michael Bay an offer? And Lorenzo de Bonaventura responded with this: I think Bay has made it really clear that he loved what he did and he's not doing it anymore. So I think the answer is we're writing a script. At that point, once we get the script we have a strong belief in, then we'll begin to debate that. Michael's made it really clear that he didn't want to do it. I don't blame him. He spent a hell of a decade of his life shooting them. And a follow-up question to this was, are you developing a script that picks up where The Last Knight left off? And de Bonaventura said straight up, this one word no. So in two separate interviews now, after initially saying that they were thinking about a sequel to Transformers The Last Knight, that was from the mouth of Lorenzo de Bonaventura. De Bonaventura has retracted that statement. He said that they're looking at something else, and now he's categorically said no. N-O. So I hope this deads any sort of rumour now that Transformers The Last Knight will receive a sequel. I do not want to hear about another article where Lorenzo de Bonaventura has been speaking about the future of the Transformers cinematic universe, and he's hinting about going back to Bay. Now, I've read that Lorenzo de Bonaventura is friends with Michael Bay. That's why he champions Bay so much. And of course, Bay has made that franchise a lot of money. I love the Michael Bay movies. Sometimes they frustrated me, but other times they gave me great enjoyment. And without the Michael Bay movies, we may never have got to see Bumblebee the movie. So, you know, it's a transition, it's a progression, and now we're moving towards a reboot. So I'm not going to be one of those people that hates on Michael Bay, but I did think it was time to move on. The one issue that I had off the back of Bumblebee was this, where we kept on getting this misfed information, where the studio seemed pretty damn clear on where they wanted to go. They were happy, yes, Bumblebee didn't make as money as some of the other Transformers films, but it set them on a steady road to making this franchise fresh, rebooting this franchise, and giving this franchise a new lease of life. So with that, the studio seemed very happy, but the producer, because of his ties to the previous director, seemed very difficult that he wanted to give that up until now. So I hope this is the end of the saga of whether or not we're going to get a sequel to Transformers The Last Knight. My honest opinion when it comes to everything about this debacle is that ideally what should have been done, but it wouldn't have worked because people would have complained and we may never have got the B movie if it had happened, but I would have preferred if they'd finished, you know, the Transformers The Last Knight saga with that second film, or just not have ended Transformers The Last Knight on a cliffhanger. If they'd just done that, closed it, because ideally when we had Transformers Dark of the Moon, it felt like Bay was closing his trilogy there, but he never did, he came back for a couple more. But if they had just had closure on Transformers The Last Knight, at that point in time, before Bumblebee became into development, we wouldn't have such debates right now, because we could then safely say it was the right time, it was the right place to go for the reboot, and you wouldn't have this split fandom where some of the people out there really do love the Bayverse. They want the Bayverse to continue, they love the Bayhem, and they want more of it. And it sounds like now, unfortunately, they're not going to get it. And I do understand and appreciate where they are coming from, because nobody likes a series or a film or a franchise to end on a cliffhanger where it was being made very clear that it needed a follow-up movie. It is just, you know, it's very frustrating if you're watching something and it just comes to a grinding halt, or for example a show gets cancelled and you followed it for seasons and such a long time, and then the studio or the network just say, look, no more, we don't want it, we don't care that people are invested in it, it's not making enough money, let's just put that to the side. I completely understand that. I've had that happen with shows in the past, but it makes me optimistic for the future, because you now know that you're not going to get the same old. And if you think about it, it didn't matter how awesome those Bay trailers were. They suckered us in at times and they made us think maybe we'll get a better Transformers story. But, you know, if you look at the last two, Age of Extinction and Transformers The Last Knight, it never really happened, did it? It was always the same. The Transformers looking for something and lots of convoluted subplots that, you know, weren't necessary. Unnecessary characters, unnecessary humour. You know, some of it's funny, some of it was good. And like I said, I enjoy the Bay movies for what they are. Straight up Bayhem. But I also enjoy having the more detail, and like we got with Bumblebee, a more emotionally driven Transformers film. And I personally want to see more of that. And it feels like now we can dust aside and think to ourselves, the debate is over and we can safely look forward to whatever is coming next. It won't be Bayhem, and it sounds like it's either going to be Travis Knight returning to the helm and working on a buddy movie with Bumblebee and Optimus Prime, or a bigger blockbuster Transformers movie that would be on the scalable level of a Transformers 6, but it will have no reference to the Bayverse. So it's quite exciting because this will be a different approach. We'll get to see maybe a new director with that second option. Who would you like to see direct a Transformers film? Let me know the directors that you would like to see in the comments below. And with this buddy movie, what sort of Decepticons would you like to see featured? Because there was talk that Bumblebee and Optimus would be the antagonists, which would mean that the humans would be hunting Bumblebee and Prime. I'm not entirely sure I like that idea, because I think then it becomes a more human-driven movie, whereas I want more Transformers. I think Travis Knight would know what he's doing, so he would get that. He'd know what the fandom wants. He did it well with Bumblebee, so I'm sure he'd be good enough with a sequel too. But it's interesting to now think about the future, and what we might get is going to be very different. I still hope that they can keep in the back of their mind an Optimus Prime solo movie. I honestly don't understand why they're not doing this. I think it would be money. I think it's a great opportunity there. He's the most popular of all the Transformers, and he does have such a stoic background, yet for some reason Lorenzo de Bonaventura thinks that it's too difficult to make a Prime movie. So I want you to get involved. I hope this now ends any sort of speculation around a Transformers The Last Night sequel. If we just so happen to hear Lorenzo de Bonaventura speak out again and give more conflicting information, then in my honest opinion, I think that the time would be to, you know, maybe decide to put some tape over this guy's mouth or let him go, because the studio is telling you the direction they want to go in, and a producer should not be trying to confuse or blur the lines. He should be backing what they're doing. And I know that he keeps on saying, well, it depends on the script. It depends what we get. If we get this in the script, we'll look to do it like this. If we get this script, we look to do it like that. I know he keeps saying that. It's almost like to say, well, until we've got a script, we don't know what we're doing. So I'm going to keep on pushing back to that. Well, if you don't know, don't say it. Just don't say anymore. Just go radio silent, get the scripts together, and then once you know where you're going, talk it up, because we actually know the direction that the live action universe is going in. That would be my advice, and that's what I would be advising to do if I was Hasbro and Paramount. I keep my cards close to my chest. They did a great job with Bumblebee in terms of the marketing. They can do it again, but they do need to get Lorenzo de Bonaventura on a leash, because at the moment he's a liability. You can see from these articles, people are calling it at the moment and saying that he is the problem and he is blurring the lines, nobody else. So what do you think about this? Let me know in the comments section below. Let me know what you think of Transformers The Last Night not having a sequel. Are you disappointed? Are you disappointed about the end of the Bayverse? And what do you think about the Optimus Prime buddy movie and the potential of this other Transformers film? what do you think that should be? Which Decepticons and Autobots should be featured? And who should be the director for that movie? I'd love to hear from you guys and all that's left to be said. Also, if we are setting up a live action cinematic universe, should we have an overall director? We've seen with, DC, they had a go at it with Zack Snyder. He oversaw all of the movies. Didn't quite work out. We know that Marvel have their setup where they oversee everything. So should we have, for example, maybe Travis Knight be at the top and overseeing other spin-off movies to make sure that they all do fall in line with the vision that he's presented with Bumblebee? Or do you think we should be venturing down that route where each movie is a standalone movie and each to their own, so there is no tie, there is no crossover, and it just gives us the enjoyment and satisfaction of a different take on a Transformers film? All that's left to be said, I've said enough, but please rate, comment and subscribe. This is Delzinski signing out.